You know what it is, EPMD. Let's get to it. Yeah, what's going on, party people in the place to be? I go by the name of the BK Apologist, transmitting all the way live. New York is the city, Brooklyn is the borough. What's good? What's popping? Happy Tuesday to everyone. Let me see what's up to the people on the chat. We got, of course, my main man, Mr. Green, on the check-in. We got Bodega Lady Shotty Mills. Rah! She's in here. Listen, guys, please share the link. Tell a friend that it's him again. If you'd love to support the online ministry, you can hit me on PayPal. Or if you'd like to be a monthly supporter, you could become a patron where you get an assortment of tasty pastries and goodies that will edify you in multiple ways. So with that being said, of course, I got to have, the other half of the EPMD of urban apologetics. One wrecks, the other destroys. Of course, I'm talking about no other than Mr. True ID himself, Adam Coleman. What's going on, sir?
Hey, man, I'm good, man. You know what? Honestly, I don't know if I'm gonna be destroying anything tonight, man. I know you got some bars ready, dog. So I'm just like, I'm just trying to stay out of the way. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, you're a funny guy now. You
got to stay out of the way, bro.
Son, you keep a 16 at the ready, so it's all good, man. I already know.
You got to.
Yeah, I mean, in fact, in a weird sense, this kind of a continuation of a conversation you had with this gentleman by the name of Jabari'S Osaze, and we were talking off behind the scenes about just the importance of what we're doing tonight, and I was wondering if you could elaborate to the party people why we're doing this.
No, it's good, man. So I think that when it comes to the conscious community in general, right? And this is actually something that occurred to me the other day. I told you I spoke to Shaka Atmos on the phone for like 2 hours. It was a really good conversation, man. It was a good conversation. It really was. And one thing that I realized is that when it comes to like these platforms that we're dealing with, a lot of this subculture was born out of face-to-face on the street kind of battling, like, what I'm saying? That's kind of what it was. And so I think it still kind of carries that vibe where, every conversation is perceived through that lens. But I think, a lot of what we do, and particularly what we're about to do tonight, I think I really want people to understand, like, that's not the vibe that we're on. This is not some like, just trying to, outdo somebody or we just try to body somebody. Actually, there's room for real worldview analysis. Matter of fact, I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen right quick.
Sure. The video, or you got something else here?
Yeah, I got this. I made this PowerPoint right quick.
All right, cool.
Just real briefly. Hopefully, I'm on the right. Oh, actually, no, I'm not on the right screen.
Shout out to Lala in the check-in. What up, sis?
Oops, I'm all jacked up here, man. There we go. Yeah, so where'd it go? Okay, boom. Yeah, so just real quick. I mean, and I'm partly saying this because what we're about to look at, and I'm sure you'll do a fuller summary, but we're about to look at the kind of funeral proceedings, that these individuals are undergoing. And I want to make it very clear that, this is not like we just ragging on people or making light of, death and grieving. As people know, anybody who's kept up with me, I lost my dad a couple of years ago. Like, I'm certainly acquainted with what it's like to lose someone. And so we would never, look to diss anybody or belittle anybody in that regard. That being said, if we just kind of take a step back and look at a bird's eye view, what's going on in the African-American community right now is you have, statistically speaking, Pew Research shows that the fastest growing group among African-Americans from a religious standpoint are those who consider themselves to be the unaffiliated, those who are just, spiritual, generically speaking, don't really commit to any particular religion, atheists, agnostics, or whatever. So you have a lot of people, this growing number of people who are not looking to so-called organized religion and systems of religion, if you will, or spirituality to answer life's biggest question. They're turning to some kind of more individualized, type of I'm just spiritual type of a thing, right? But essentially, everybody's asking the same questions. There are just certain fundamental questions, big questions that we all have to deal with, right? Life, death, morality, ethics, so on and so forth. These are the things that a worldview are meant to help you navigate. And so as people are out here looking for a system of thought, a spirituality, religion, or whatever, to navigate these big questions, it is important that we engage ideologies like or religious systems, spiritualities like Kemeticism, Hebrew Israelism, Islam, so on and so forth, and do critiques and break down the worldview. So when it comes to those who are seeking and trying to answer these big questions, they can see how it is that the biblical worldview affords a framework to answer life's biggest questions, whereas these other worldviews fall short. So that's the vein that we're in. This is not about taking jabs at other people's funerary proceedings. This is a real thing in our community, man, and we want to be a guide as we help people navigate some of the things that life throws at you. So that's really what this is about. You know what I mean? And so I just kind of put on the screen some things that you take into account when you're doing some worldview analysis. What is the meta ethics? What exists? Does God exist? Does he not? Anthropology, the ideology about man and or their perspective on man, knowledge, ethics, salvation. We can get into those things later, particularly the salvation part. That's going to be key. Yep. And I'll break that down later. But I just wanted to kind of give that disclaimer. You know what I'm saying? This is not rag session trying to body people. We're dealing with some real issues, man. So
absolutely. Yeah. And I also want to say, from most of the people we've dealt with in the conscious community, I mean, Jabari, we have to show a lot of respect for Jabari because he will stand on his square. You know what I mean? Absolutely. He will engage you about his worldview. Yes. You might have to press him a little. But he will, to his credit, he will not only talk about it, he will debate, because he actually went and debated Dr. Bantu. And he stood on his square for an entire evening talking about his worldview. So you got to respect that.
Well, truth be told, I think I'm at liberty to say this because I was a part of, organizing that debate, what I'm saying, as were you were behind the scenes and that kind of a thing. So as the decision making was going on about who would be a suitable, debate, opponent for Bantu, Jabari, obviously he was like top of the list. He was one of the first people that came out, not because, it's not a statement about, oh, he's just so much smarter than everybody else, or he just, whatever. It's the fact that the man presents really well. He's cordial, he's not going to try to cuss you out. And then when he gets in a pinch, that sort of a thing, right. He presents himself in an honorable way. And so that's what that was. Nevertheless, we have some serious disagreements, with the ideology. And so we have to address it, so to his credit, I think that's how he gets down. Right. I think that's dope. It's good.
Right. It's good. So a lot of ways, this is an extension that of this conversation that both Adam and Volk have had on Sonetta. Again, just talking about worldview, and again, Jabari makes an honest effort to showcase his worldview. And one of the ways that he does it is every year he goes to Egypt and he takes a tour with him, and he does a tour of ancient Egypt. He does this pretty much almost every year. And there's a video in his channel where he actually recreates this ancient funeral practice. And that's what we want to talk about today, because if you look at the thumbnail, and we're having some fun with him, I'm the captain now, right? The subversion of this ritual. And why I say that is because, well, let me share my screen.
Of course.
All right. The reason why I say that is because, when you look at the dictionary, the word.
I got to pause you off top, man. I'm not trying to break it up, but I saw the little transition there. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. The thing coming in. I see you, dog. Okay, you the slide master, dog. Cats don't know.
You're funny, dude.
They don't know the skills, man. I see you, bro.
Oh, you're funny. Subversion, right? It's the undermining of the power and authority of an established system or institution. And one of the things that I'm going to levy a charge against our good friend Jabari is he subverts this particular ritual. Now, before I can prove that, we have to go in and build some background information on exactly what this ritual is all about, right? So with that being said, right, we're going to go look at The Spirit of Ancient Egypt by Anna Ruiz. It says here, the souls of those who had died that day would accompany Ra and the sun on the journey through the heavens. At sunset, the solar bark would take the recently departed through the realm of the underworld to the court of Asar. Now, we're talking about ancient Kemetic eschatology, right? This is how you get to the other side, right? Where each was judged accordingly to his actions in life. All right, to continue, in the underworld, the deceased was asked questions, the correct answers to which must have been learned from these texts while alive. The text could be purchased in advance from the scribal priests. Most petitioners must have had a pretty good idea what to say when they came before the judgment hall, as it was unlikely that they would have failed to study these all-important spells while they had a chance. Talk about pop quiz, right? It's like you really have to study to make sure that you was prepared once you have died and become an ancestor.
The ultimate pop quiz.
The ultimate pop quiz. You gotta know, right? You better have a pretty good idea what to say.
Right.
So you have to study these texts, because there will be a quiz in the afterlife.
There will be a quiz.
You know what I mean?
Right. Well, I mean, just real quick. I mean, a minute ago I showed that little acronym, showing the different pieces of a worldview, and the S stood for salvation. Now that word is very obviously infused with kind of religious meaning, but even if you kind of take that out of it, if you just kind of look at all worldviews, I'll put it this way: a solid worldview will be able to look at the evil and suffering and all these kind of things, death that we see in the world, and try to give some sort of response or way to navigate it. So that every worldview has got a means of doing that, or not. Some worldviews don't, and that's something by which they can be critiqued as well. But this is what you're dealing with right here. You're dealing with what's the answer for death, basically. What's the answer for that aspect of the human experience? Exactly.
Mm-hmm. So in Egyptian Myths, A Guide to the Ancient Gods and Legends by Gary J. Shaw, he says, Apophis, or Apep, he's probably better known by most people as Apep, and his origins each night from the moment of creation, Apep, a monstrous snake, 120 cubits long, who represented disorder, attacked the sun god and fostered rebellion. As the ultimate destructive force in the universe, Apep was leader of the forces of disorder and had to be repelled from the sun god Re's solar bark or boat by his followers in order to ensure the sunrise and the continued stability of the world, right? So there's this boat that Ra has that goes from the sun into the night. And during the nighttime hours, you would have Apep coming to try to stop Ra from bringing the sun in life again. So
it's treacherous already. Dang, man, it's crazy.
Right.
Just to get to the next day, man.
Just to get to the next day. It was a daily fight.
Right.
With Apep and Ra. Described as the rower and lacking nose, ears, and eyes, Apep nevertheless still managed to possess the evil eye, which gave him the ability to paralyze men and gods. For this reason, kings performed a ritual in which they struck the eye of Apep with a bat, flinging away his evil gaze. So there's this battle royale going on in the underworld, right? But it's not just the gods, right? Because
it's like the Royal Rumble. You got to throw somebody over there.
Basically, right? In the Handbook of Egyptian Mythology, Geraldine Pinch, is in Egyptian accounts of the nightly journey of the sun through the underworld. Apep usually attacks in the 7th and 12th hours of the night. Powerful deities stand in the prow of the solar bark to protect the sun god against Apep. Seth, the strongest of the gods, can be shown clubbing or spearing Apep snake. So the gods have to protect Ra. They're kind of like his entourage, his bodyguards, protecting Ra from Apep. And this is happening in the 7th and 12th hours of the night. Okay.
Man, how can you sleep with all that going on, man? You know what I'm saying?
Well,
like,
it's wild. But it's, again, like I said, it's not just the gods who are involved. It says here the spirits of the dead were expected to join in the struggle against Apep. And rituals were performed in temples to ensure his defeat. The book of overthrowing Apophis or Apep, the most terrifying deities in the Egyptian pantheon, were evoked to combat the chaos serpent and destroy all the aspects of his being, such as his body, his name, his shadow, and his magic. Priests acted out this unending war by drawing pictures or making models of Apep. These were cursed and then destroyed by stabbing, trampling, and burning. This will be known as apotriaic magic, synthetic magic. You know, I do this thing in my realm, and something should happen in the other realm based on what I'm doing in this realm.
Sure, yeah.
Okay, so let's keep going. It says the sun god can be shown alone in the day boat, but in the night boat, other deities usually stand on deck, ready to defend the vulnerable nocturnal form of the sun. The dangers included submerged sandbanks and attacks by hostile crocodiles, turtles, and snakes. The worst of these enemies was the monstrous chaos serpent Apep. Sometimes the solar bark was surrounded or followed by a whole fleet of small boats carrying various protective deities and emblems. The prow and stern posts of these boats terminate in crowns, snakes, or human or animal heads, right? So you got all these charms, you got these spells, you have the recently deceased who are trying to make it to the other world, fighting alongside the most strongest deities to defend Ra from the snake Apep.
Yeah, man, so here's the thing, man. And I know we still got a little ways to go, but I gotta say this though, man. And, I mean, imagine like, okay, from biblical perspective, it's appointed for man to die once, and then there's the judgment. I was just saying before Christ, and then if you submitted to Him as Lord, then you enter into into the new kingdom. You know what I mean? So you into eternal rest. But imagine, on this paradigm, you know what I'm saying? I mean, you pass away, and it's like, dog, I'm just trying to make it to the field of reeds, my dude. I'm just trying to get in.
Right.
But and then the guys are like, nah, fam, like it's time to bang. Like, it ain't time for that rest though. Like we'll get to the trial eventually. It's time, like you gotta ante up. You know what I'm saying? it's just wild.
Nah, it's gang time. You know
gang,
what I mean?
It's time to get it in, man. Ain't no rest, man.
Absolutely not.
It's time to battle, B.
In the Books of the Dead, Manuals for Living and Dying by Stanislav Grof, those who worship Ra as their principal deity believe that after physical death, they would join him and his crew and travel with them in the solar barge. The principal text was Tuat, or the Book of What Is the Tuat, written by the priests of Amun-Ra to proclaim the sun god's supremacy. The Tuat provided for the followers of Amun-Ra the information about the divisions of the Duat, the knowledge of the halls and gates, and the names of beings who guarded them, and the necessary magic formulae and power words for the safe passage of the solar barge and its crew. So you have the recently ancestored people on the solar bark fighting along these deities. Mind you, they have to know the name of the person who's controlling the boat, the name of Ra, the name of all the deities, the name of all the enemies. They have to know that before they die.
You got to know the whole set, man.
Or this doesn't work.
Yeah, I mean,
mind you, yeah, right. Then you got to know the necessary magic formula and power words for safe passage.
It's like you got to throw up the right,
the right gang sign,
right sign, man. You can't be,
false. You wearing the wrong rag in this town, it might be problems.
It might be a problem, man. They're like, yo, man, my guy, you got to hop in. We riding on these enemies, dog.
Right.
We riding on Apep, homie. What you throwing up? You say you got to throw it up.
You riding with a set or not, right?
You riding with a set or not.
But at the same time, the priests in the physical realm, they're doing rituals in order for you to have safe passage at the same time. So there's both the recently ancestor and the priesthood working in tandem to make sure that this boat makes it to the other side. Okay. The Polyphemus journey of the soul was closely associated with the, how I say this, diurnal nocturnal journey of the sun god Ra, who emerged in the east from behind Manu, the mountain of sunrise, and began his journey in the Majet boat, the bark of millions of years, it was called. During the day, he traversed the sky, giving heat, light, and life to the earth. At sunset, the sunboat passed through the chain of mountains in the west. And during the night, as the second bark, the Misket boat, continued the journey through the Duat, the Egyptian underworld. Right? This happened every night. The Duat was a gloomy and treacherous place that presented grave dangers for the solar crew. It was divided into 12 provinces, usually called Aritz, Nut, and Sakhet, each of the equivalent of 1 night hour. All the halls had gates and specific watchers, heralds, and gatekeepers who had to be correctly named with the help of the Book of the Dead before the bark was allowed to continue. So again, the recently ancestor jumped on the boat with Ra, fighting alongside the most notorious deities that Egypt had to offer to fight Apep and his crew.
Right.
Having to know all the spells, having to know who the watchers, the heralds, the gatekeepers. You got to know all the players in the game. Plus, you got to know the sacred power words so you can get through each gate.
Already, they're doing too much, dog. I'm like, hey, man, drop me off at 125th, man. I'm going to go, what I mean? Drop me off, man. I'm good.
Nah, man, you got to make this transfer. 125th, you got to grab the A, and then you got to take the B52.
Yo, it's a lot going on, but it was interesting. No, I had thought about it until just a second ago, so I guess I'll just say it now. But I find it interesting that there is this sense that death ain't easy. You know what I'm saying? Like, to pass from death to what they would render as some sort of, positive afterlife. This is not an easy undertaking. You know what I'm saying? And I just think that really speaks to, some sort of deep intuition that mankind has. That, there's a seriousness to when it comes to eternity, death and eternity. And it's like they're trying to navigate that. But unfortunately for them, you got to navigate it by, knuckling up with Apep. You know what I'm saying? Like you got
Right.
Annie up, bro.
Annie up. So in the Story of Yahweh, Cultural Translation and Subversive Reception in Israelite History by Sean W. Flynn, Seth is depicted on the prow of the solar bark of Re defending it from the serpent Apep. One of these representations is well depicted in the papyrus of Hor-Wubin B from Da'a el-Bahari, dated to the late 21st dynasty. Seth in anthropomorphic form in the classic smiting pose, like the human king on the Narmer tablet, spears the god of Apep, represented under the bark as a coiled snake. And here's a picture of the boat, right, with Ra being carried, and then you see the snake around Ra. That's Apep, right? The sun god Ra in the solar bark, protected by the coils of a serpent from the tomb of Seti, New Kingdom, right? Just so you can get a visual of what we're talking about.
Yeah.
And here's a larger picture, right? That's the boat going into the underworld, fighting Apep. Okay.
Man.
Here's Set spearing the snake Apep. You can find this in the Egyptian Museum in Cairo. And here's a bigger version. As you see, he's down his throat. Pow, hold that, homie. You know what I mean? Take that. So it's violent. The eschatology is very violent and action-packed. Right? This is Ra traveling through the underworld in his bark from the copy of the Book of Gates in the tomb of Ramses, circa 1290 BC. Unknown 91 Book of Gates, bark of Ra. And you see the snake, right? It's real. It's real for these people.
It's real rap, man. It's real rap.
Here's a closer look at the boat again with Ra and the snake. Right? So, wait, hold up. Yeah, that's right. So, and we actually have one of these funeral boats. They actually found one This is the reassembled funerary boat of Cheops, now in the museum next to the Great Pyramid. So we actually have one of these solar barks here. Well, not here, but even this kind of a shape, right? So,
it's kind of interesting too, man. I'm thinking about just the fact that the emphasis that Jabari places on myth. You know what I'm saying, and taking it seriously, just not taking things literal. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that I've heard, like Tazariak, for example, like really press him on. Because it's like you want people to take this notion that, oh no, these deities weren't really deities; they were just principles. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, nah, man. I mean, it's pretty clear that when you're looking at, the mythos. I'm saying now, even if you could say something like, maybe they could, draw some principle from it, or maybe, they represent principles in some sense or another. It still seems like they really intend, and by they, I mean those who scripted these mythologies out, these funerary texts and whatever. It's pretty obvious that they intended for the reader to understand these to be real entities. You know what I'm saying? Like it's not like they're not giving you names and this to remember and that to remember, or so on and so forth, for no reason. I mean, you're supposed to remember these names with the intent that you're actually going to have to use them as you're on the boat, about to ride on APEP. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know what I mean? Like that's real. I mean, it's pretty clear, right? And I just think that, because some of these things are so outlandish, you know what I mean? And it's easier, for Jabari to just kind of mythologize everything, rather than to kind of really just go into the teeth of his own worldview and say, hey, you know what? I'm actually going to defend, the reality of these stories. You know what I'm saying? Right. I think that's right. I think he's kind of taking the easy way out, to be honest.
Well, we're about to see that in a minute. So this is the boat that Jabari uses for his reenactment of this ritual. And to get a better understanding of how big this boat is, this is him holding the boat. Now, before you say, oh, he got a toy boat, he's not keeping it real. Actually, no, that's not true, actually, to his credit, because we find many model boats within these ancient funeral places and pyramids, right? They actually did have them at this scale, these funeral boats, right? So these would be used so that they would be carried on to the afterworld. And as you see here, you see the body, right? You see the people guarding the body. It's fine. The size is fine. He's actually going according to ritual in this aspect.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Right. So, and here's another model of these funeral boats, these solar barks that you would find. Okay, and remember,
great amount of detail.
It's beautiful. Like I can imagine how it must have looked when it was first created. Very creative, very beautiful, items. And but remember, the recently ancestored would have to know all these people. Right. So now, with that being said, we had to give you the background, right, of what this ritual is. So now what we're going to do is we're going to see Jabari enact the ritual. And I want you to pay close attention to what he says. And I want you to compare it to the background information that's just been provided to you to see if there's any correlations. All right. So with that being said, I'm going to share your thing now, Adam.
Right. Supports the greater spiritual form. And
you want to start that back a couple seconds?
Yeah, it's supposed to be 4:58.
I'll tell you right now. Hold up. Yes, 4:58.
Okay, I'll start from 4:43. Is that cool? Or?
Yeah, that's fine.
All right, because they can put some ones in the chat and make sure everybody can hear. But it should be good though, I think.
Can everybody hear the video?
I'm gonna go ahead and run it.
Yeah, get it.
To the dock. Physical form only supports the greater spiritual form. And as we do that, we will sail this boat along the Haki in remembrance of these souls and in recognition of their presence with us. We understand that without them, there is no us. And that we must continue to call their names in order for them to be present. And when they are present, we will be powerful. And when we
you can stop there.
They will be present.
All right.
You stop there.
Sure.
So he says at the 4:58 mark. He says, sail this boat along the Hapi in remembrance of these souls, and a recognition of their presence with us. We understand that without them, there is no us, and we must continue to call their names in order for them to be present. And when they are present, we will be powered. Right? That's what he said. Adam, if you can now go to the 23-minute mark.
Well, I actually want to just comment on that real quick. He also said right before then, he said something that this physical form is representative of a larger spiritual form, is what he's saying. So again, there is, for at least for Jabari. Now I recognize not all Kemetics are like this. Some of them don't hold to what they refer to as spookism, spirituality, whatever. Right. But at least in this regard, he's taking a spiritual approach. He really believes that there's some spiritual reality to what it is that he's doing. And that speaks to something that you just laid out in the preliminary information about this notion of, enacting something in the physical that has some sort of spiritual parallel, or brings about a spiritual, effect, if you will. You're talking about that particular kind of magic that I can't pronounce, but you kind of covered that. But we're not making this stuff up. These are actual things that he's talking about. Right. I think you might have to share it again.
20. Can you go to the 23? Oh yeah. I'm sorry. I gotta.
And so.
You said 23 minutes?
Yeah, go to the 23 and 50-second mark. I mean, you can start at 23 if that's easier to.
All right. 23:35.
Okay.
It is at this moment that this boat of Ra, that this ship recognizing our ancestors, that this ship that recognizes our journey, that this ship recognizes our journey from these shores to Western African shores, to the western shores of the United States. Will recognize that our ancestors will move forward. Our ancestors are always here. Our ancestors will ensure that we once more will be as powerful and as blessed and as reverent and as sacred as they chose us to be.
All right, you stop that.
Say, Ma'akeru, Ma'akeru, Ma'akeru.
All right. So he says, it is at this moment that the boat of Ra, that this ship recognizing our ancestors, that this ship that recognizes our journey, that this ship recognize our journey from these shores to Western African shores, to the western shores of the United States. We'll move forward. Our ancestors are always here. Our ancestors will ensure that we once more will be as powerful and as blessing and as reverent and as sacred as they chose us. Okay. All right. So, all right. So, okay, that's interesting. Did I make a mistake here? Hold on. Oh no, good. Yes. Let me put you back up. If you can go to the 25-minute mark.
And just to repeat, I mean, we got somebody in the chat who clearly missed the preamble, but this is not making light of these proceedings, man. Like, we're doing worldview analysis, and if you're not mature enough to recognize that, then shame on you. All right, you said 25 minutes?
Yes.
All right.
This ship will remain here. In many ways, it is a symbol of the physical forms that we will all shed. That the names that we called and the ancestors that we thought of, the ancestors that we brought back into existence, will continue to live on in us, will continue to support us, and will continue to buoy us. With that, we say, Ma'akeru, Ma'akeru. This is a good time, community. This is a good time, family, for you to quietly say prayers for those ancestors in the manner that they would see fit.
You can stop it.
Use the words.
All right. So He says, this ship will remain here in many ways. It is a symbol of the physical form that we will all share, that the names that we call them, the ancestors, that we thought of the ancestors, that we brought back into existence, will continue to live on in us, will continue to support us. Okay? Now, with that being said, there's some questions we need to ask. Okay?
Uh-oh.
Where is the necessary magic formulae and power words for the safe passage of the solar barge and its crew? I didn't hear any magic formula or power words. Did you, Adam?
No, man. And for context, I mean, I can put the link to the video in the chat, so if people want to go back and check, the extent, the full video, they can, correct us if we're wrong, but absolutely not. I watched the whole thing, and not a one, man.
Right. Another question is, did Jabari act out this unending war by drawing pictures or making models of Apep that were cursed and then destroyed by stabbing, trampling, and burning? Did he do that?
No, sir.
He did not do that.
No, sir.
Where is the ritual in which they struck the eye of Apep with a bat, flinging away his evil gaze? Now, the king is supposed to do that, right? But the king isn't here, but we do have a Kemetic priest. So why was this ritual not taking place here?
Yeah, somebody needs to do it.
Right.
Right.
Have the text been purchased in advance from the scribal priests? Now, we don't know, right? I can't say that didn't happen, but there was no conversation about, hey guys, I hope you guys got your text, so when it's your time, you guys are prepared for the big battle. Like, there was no talk of that at all.
No.
Right? So now the reason we bring this up, so actually before I even do all that, the subversion of the ritual, right? What is he subverting here? Well, we see that for the solar bark, there is this great and grand battle. And big up to my man, David Folk. He's like, oh dear, this is a train wreck. Hey, man. Hey.
Oh, shout out to David Folk, man. He's got some great work out there, man. Y'all need to check him out, man.
He's amazing, amazing dude, man.
Yes, sir.
So I'm glad he's enjoying this. So as a Kemetic priest, he is to prepare the recently ancested individuals for the greatest war they've ever undertaken in the spiritual realm. Right? They're supposed to know the names of all the players in the game. They have to know all the spells, right? Fight in tandem with the greatest pantheon of gods in Egypt to fight and protect Ra to make it to the other side. Right. But what does Jabari make this ritual into? A memorial service. It's not supposed to be a memorial service. He's supposed to make sure that he does his part, that these ancestors have safe passage.
Right.
But what did he keep saying? They're still here with us. Let's remember their names. And as long as we remember their names, they're here. No. They're not supposed to be here. They're supposed to be over there.
They're supposed to be fighting.
They're supposed to be fighting. And you're supposed to help in the battle.
Right.
Because you're a priest. It's not a memorial service.
No.
It's your job is to make sure that these men and women make it through one of the most treacherous places in the underworld. You're supposed to do that. So why are we bringing this up?
One job. Basically.
Yeah, one job.
It's true.
So why are we bringing this up? Well, one of the reasons is that people like Jabari and many others in the conscious community would like to make this solid one-to-one correlation with the magical literature of Kemet and the Bible.
Right.
So, the Ten Commandments comes from the Book of the Dead. Well, we're looking at some of the funeral practices that we found in the pyramid text and coffin text and the Prep Emheru. Does this, ladies and gentlemen, look like anything that we see in scripture?
No. No. And you know, I think that's a perfect example, man, of, to be honest with you, I think some people in the concept community generally don't know, but then you have those who should know better. I think it's just really disingenuous when they keep perpetuating this lie that, I mean, I've heard people say things, just crazy stuff like, oh, the entire Bible is based off of the Book of the Dead and so on and so forth. Right. And it's like, man, this kind of polytheistic, and I know they don't want to use that term, but in terms of how it's depicted in this particular mythos, you know, this type of multi-deity type of a scenario, this really would have been, you know, unrecognizable to a Jew at that time. You know, it's something that they want to be a part of, and this, they were just going to knowingly participate in idolatry, you know, which obviously would have been against you know, their spiritual moral code. Right. But I mean, this is not some sort of carbon copy between you know, Kemetic and Israel, man. I mean, I don't know how, like, what can make it more clear. You know what I'm saying?
Actually, Dr. David Folk wants to make it even more clear. And for those who don't know, Dr. Folk is an actual Egyptologist. And he says, this is silly. The ritual was not with a model that was floated on the water. He's confusing the solar bark with the Neshmet, the Osiris bark. Look at that. Look at that. As a priest, that's a major faux pas for a priest.
That's a big deal.
Which we'll get to in a minute. But the main thing is,
thanks for the insight, by the way. That's dope. That's interesting.
He says this would have been unrecognizable to an Egyptian also. Yikes.
Wow. but you know, that's an important point, though, because I literally said that in my exchange with Jabari'S. I said you guys teach stuff that would literally be unrecognizable to an ancient Egyptian. And I wasn't playing around. I wasn't trying to be funny when I said that kind of stuff. Like, they literally are trying to, I guess, recreate or I don't know what they're trying to do, but I guess kind of get somewhere in proximity to what an ancient Egyptian would have practiced. But this is not it. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is not it.
Right.
But here they market this stuff, or they package this stuff as if it's like this is how Africans got down. Like, we got to ride with the answers. This is how ancestors got down. No, it's not. No, it isn't. You know what I'm saying? And I think they just need to be honest about that. Now, if you're gonna like make, you know, changes and all that kind of stuff, all right, just be real about it. That's all. Just be real.
So again, right, the point is there isn't a one-to-one correlation between the Word of God, the Bible, Old or New Testament, with what we just read. That's one. Right. Two, let's say this ritual was true, and the only way the dearly departed can make it to the other side is with the rituals, with the understanding of the text, knowing the names, with the priest doing his part of the ritual. Mm-hmm. He did nothing of these things.
Right.
So he failed as a priest. In fact, in the words of the Green Arrow, you have failed this city. The ancestors are in trouble because you didn't do your job.
A lot of ancestors ain't making it, apparently.
A lot of them make it. APAP had a nice lunch or dinner.
Right.
Ancestors did not make it because of you.
I mean, and what's interesting is that, I mean, what we're seeing with this whole drama between, you know, APEP and then, you know, the recently departed and so forth. I mean, that's really part of a bigger story, as I understand it, in ancient Kemet. It's part of a bigger story of this struggle between chaos, Isfet, you know what I'm saying, and Ma'at. You know, this struggle between order and chaos. It is really something that kind of undergirds much of their mythology, whether it be in terms of their origin stories or even their eschatology, which we'll get to that later on. But so this is not, it's not a small thing for him to get some of this stuff wrong. Like, this is a big piece of their theology and their worldview, this whole dynamic, you know, and where they fit within it.
Right. So not only does there isn't a correlation between scripture and the magic of ancient Kemet.
Right.
He doesn't understand the magic of ancient Kemet. And these people who came to Egypt with him, they went because they expected an authentic ancient Kemetic experience. And what they got was a very nice, reverent, and respectful memorial service. And listen, every culture has their way of remembering their dead. And that's beautiful. It's beautiful.
Of course.
We all have our ways to remember those who have passed on, right? But he was doing more, but that wasn't what he's supposed to do as a Kemetic priest. He did not prepare the ancestors for the fight of their afterlives.
No.
That's what he was supposed to do. He did not do that. He failed.
Right.
So, I mean,
well,
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm gonna say a little bit more here, man. I'm gonna share my screen right quick.
Yes, sir. Go for it.
All right, a couple things. Is there something else that you want?
No, I'm good.
Okay, cool. I got a couple slides. I'm
Yours.
gonna do my best BK apologist impression. pull some slides out here. But just kind of bring back to why these things are important. Let me see. Do I need to make this? Can they see that? Or do I need to make that larger?
It's big. I think it's good.
Okay, cool. I don't want to have to switch back and forth, so I'll just do it. Matter of fact, let me. Here we go. Oh, that's even better. Just to kind of bring it back to why I think this is important, and we want to do these kind of comparisons so that people can clearly see the distinction between these worldviews and how you can't just be willy-nilly with it. I mean, it's not just kind of a one-size-fits-all spirituality type of a deal. And there's some real nuances here that we need to tease out. So one of the things that struck me as I was watching the video, is, again, going back to what I said earlier. I mean, you have scores of people out here now, who are looking for real answers to life's biggest questions. I'm saying that's a real thing. And unfortunately, they're just kind of lost. It's kind of like this vague spirituality that is kind of, taking root in our community. And with that being said, one of the things that we see often from the conscious community in terms of criticizing Christianity, as we're trying to give answers for these kind of things, is that we are holding to blind faith. You know what I'm saying? And we've talked about this on the show several times. I'm not going to go all the way down the line on that. But this idea that we just are just stupid and we hold to these beliefs with no evidence and so on and so forth. And really, the notion of blind faith, I would encourage people to check out the video I did with Pastor Tim Allison on his channel. It was called Unashamedly Black. I always get it wrong. Unapologetically Black, Unashamedly Christian on his channel. I did a more full breakdown. But essentially, when you look at the Greek and the Hebrew in terms of the words that are used for faith, and then look at those terms in context, the idea of blind faith is really something that's just would have been foreign to the biblical writers. You know what I'm saying? When they're talking about faith, they're really talking about putting your trust in something or someone for which you have good reason to do so. Right. You know, and I use examples about Hebrews 11 and how the writer is basically giving them a history lesson as essentially to provide evidence as to why they can trust God for what he was saying he's going to do.
Believe in loyalty. Believe in loyalty.
Sure. Now, here's what I said that to say this is that that's really what biblical faith is. Now, when you come to, as we do all the time from an apologist standpoint, we're often providing argumentation to demonstrate the reality of this monotheistic Christian God that we say that we hold to, whether it be the Kalam cosmological argument, moral argument, argument for reason, argument for fine tuning, and we're getting down to, the argument for the resurrection to demonstrate particularly, the Christian worldview and the evidence thereof. We're giving arguments to show why it is that we affirm that Christianity is true, right? Now, if Christianity is true, then all the attachments to it, when we stand in confidence, saying that in Christ, we have that pass into the new kingdom, saying by his righteousness and his alone. When we stand on that, right? As a matter of fact, let me go to the my next slide. I think I got it right here. 1 Corinthians 15. Paul is talking about, actually, I'll start at, I'll just read verse 17. It says, and if Christ has not been raised, your faith is futile. You're still in your sins, right? And then those, also who have fallen asleep in Christ are lost. If only for this life we have hope in Christ, we are of all people most pitied, right? And what Paul is really articulating there is look, if Christ isn't raised from the dead, because people were questioning that, whether or not the resurrection, was real in that instance. If Christ wasn't raised from the dead, then we're all wasting our time. I'm saying this thing isn't true. If it's not backed by something that's greater, that's just more than our opinion, then we've got a real problem on our hands, right? Now, I said that to say this. When it comes to these whole proceedings with the boat and the claims that he's making about them going to the afterlife and so on and so forth, what is the evidence that any of this is true? Okay, whether we're talking about the actual ancient Egyptian text or whether we're talking about the specific practices that Jabari'S putting into place that we obviously see, as you just already showed, depart from what we saw in the ancient text and ancient practices. Whichever way you go, what is the evidence that any of these things are true, right? And this is really, like you said, this is a continuation from what I was saying when I was on Side Netter. It's like these guys are always taking jabs at Christianity. You know what I'm saying? Like that's not nothing new at all for their channel, right? But when it comes to their worldview, what I want to see is evidence and argumentation that demonstrates that Kemeticism is true. Not true in the sense of you like it or that the ancestors practice it or this is what the ancestors believe. No, I want to know, why should I affirm that Kemeticism is true in the same sense that I can see that 2 + 2 = 4? That's what I wonder. What's the truth value? And if you can't provide that, then there's no reason. Whereas I have good reason to put my trust in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, in Yahweh. I've got good reason to do that. There's no good reason to entrust my eternal self over to whatever it is that Jabari wants to preach, right? What evidence is there? You know what I'm saying? That's what we want to know. So, I want to say that outset. So when it comes to how do you test the worldview, one of the major tests is going to be, is there a good reason to believe that it's true, right? Now, after that, you're going to want to know, like, is it coherent? Is it consistent? And I want to say something about that. But before I go there, do you want to say something?
Yeah, actually, I do. I don't know how to say this gentleman's name, but he's making a claim that Amen is Imuna. Well,
man.
We get this all the time, right? So it's actually Amin in Hebrew, and Amin means let it be so, whereas Imuna means faithfulness. So yeah, that's not correct. So continue.
No, I appreciate it, man. I appreciate it. All right. Let me go to my slides here. So, so again, my main thing when it comes to Kemeticism is I really think that there's just no good reason to think that it's true. When I think about Christianity, and I've got videos on this, people can check it out on my channel. I'll just talk about the argument for the resurrection, for example. With the argument for the resurrection of Jesus, we have historical evidence by which we can form an argument to demonstrate the truth of Christianity. You know what I'm saying? From a historic basis, we can work our way towards that conclusion and not miss a beat, logically speaking. You know what I'm saying? We got good reason based on that. I don't see anything anything near that when it comes to the Kemetic worldview. That's the kind of stuff that I'm talking about. These are the kind of gaps. And I say all the time, we got to stop painting ourselves in the corner. I think as Christians, we're always kind of hyped to, defend our worldview. We need to really press these guys and stuff. All right, let me go on. So that's true. What about coherence, right? Or consistency, right? Let me go to this right here. We're talking about the Book of the Dead, right? This is in the Book of the Dead too.
Woo! Get him.
This is in the Book of the Dead too. Let's read Book of the Dead. This is Wiles Buzz's translation from the section on weighing the heart of Annie. Now listen to what this individual says. Now, mind you, this is the person who's about to undergo the final judgment, right? Now, for those who don't know, I mean, there's like this final judgment scene that you find in the Book of the Dead where the heart has to be weighed in contrast to one of the feathers of the goddess Ma'at, who represents order, righteousness, truth, and so on and so forth. And if your heart is found either equal to or lighter than that feather, then you could be ushered into, it's basically you pass. You get a passing grade, and you can make it into, the field of reeds and what have you. Basically a happy afterlife. So here's a person who's about to undergo, this trial, and the Book of the Dead is something they would use, as you pointed out. It's like kind of an instruction manual on how to make it. You know what I'm saying? Like, these are spells that you would use in order to make it through. So listen to this spell right here.
Spells, not affirmations. Spells.
Oh yeah, that's right. So this is what he's about to do. It says, "My heart, my mother, my heart, my mother, my heart, my coming into being." That's kind of weird. Maybe it's, anyway. "May there be nothing to resist me at my judgment. May there be no opposition to me from the T'Chakcha." I totally probably messed that up. "May there be no parting of thee from me in the presence of him that keepeth the scales." Now, my understanding is that this is the translation that, I've heard, Jabari quote from this translation. So I'm using that, but there are others as well. But the essence here is that this person is speaking to their heart and saying, "Yo, don't snitch on me." Saying, like, don't be a witness against me when we come into this whole trial situation, right? Don't be in opposition to me as I'm standing trial, trying to make it in. You know what I'm saying? Now, there's a couple of different things that we go there. Now, I'm not claiming to know the ins and outs of all Kemetic theology, but as far as I can tell, so anybody can correct me if I'm wrong, one or two things is going on there. Either you're saying, hey, heart of mine, don't snitch on me. Keep quiet. Whether there's something that needs to be said that would undermine my case or not, you need to, you know, keep it on the hush. Either that's what it's saying, or at very least, what you're seeing is some level of uncertainty. I'm saying you see this person going into a trial scene with no amount of certainty as to whether or not they're going to be able to stand up to, you know, this judgment that they're about to face. You know, there's no possible way that they can know, right?
And
now,
this, well, I don't know if it happens to all the scarabs, but this spell has been found etched in the back of the scarab, which represents the heart.
Yeah, exactly. Right. That my understanding is that's a very
the spell is literally etched in the heart.
Right.
Right.
So you know, stop snitching. You know what I'm saying that's really what it's saying. You know what I'm saying, or you know, maybe maybe it's a lighter tone. Maybe it's just, hey, you know, maybe it's kind of a, hey, I hope that there's nothing in my heart that will, you know, come up. You know what I'm saying, like, there's no skeletons in the closet. Like maybe it's in that type of vein. But even if that's the case, then you're dealing with some level of uncertainty when you stand before you know, this trial. Now contrast that with Christianity. You know what I'm saying? Now, in Christianity, you know that on your own merit, you're not making it in. We already know that. You know what I'm saying? But fortunately, I don't have to depend on the merits of my own righteousness in order to stand rightly before God. You know what I'm saying? The price that was paid. As a matter of fact, I'm not going to go too far afield because we could go on a lot longer on this. But when you're talking about a holy, perfect, you know, incorruptible God, the only suitable payment for sin, you know what I'm saying, against such a God would be a perfect sacrifice, which is not something that we can offer up anyway, right? And so it makes a whole lot of sense that someone would have to come in, i.e. Jesus, and offer that, you know, on our behalf. That's the certainty. The certainty that I have before God is the certainty of Christ's sacrifice for my sins. I'm saying, but you know, when it comes to you know, over here, I mean, you might make it, you might not. You know what I'm saying, maybe your heart snitch on you, maybe it won't. You know what I'm saying? Like you just gonna be in trouble, right? So this worldview can't really offer you, you know what I'm saying, some sense of what in Christianese we might call some sort of like eternal security, if you will. You know what I'm saying, they can't really offer you that, right? You know, for this reason. And then another one I'm going to add on. I'll be real quick with this one. You know,
well, before you do that, so what's even more sad, and Dr. Folk, you can definitely correct me if I'm wrong, but the afterlife is basically whatever way of life you had prior to your death. If you make it through all this, you get the same way of life in the afterlife. So if you was a brick maker in ancient Kemetic, you would have to go through this, right? And then when you make it, you get to be a bricklayer in the afterlife.
Wow.
Right.
Wow.
So correct me if I'm wrong, doctor, but I think that's part of their eschatology.
Yeah, that's crazy, man. That's crazy. Yeah. Speaking of eschatology, let's go a little bit further. Now, I'm just raising this as a point as a question. You know what I'm gonna just frame this as a question. I find this interesting. I'll put it that way. Right. Let's talk a little bit more about the book of the dead. Let's talk about chapter 175. Chapter 175.
Yay, I'm right. Yay. Okay.
There you go. Book of the Dead, chapter 175. So it says, the deceased asked a tomb, what will be the duration of my life? So said he, a tomb, you shall be for millions on millions of years, a lifetime of millions of years. I will dispatch the elders and destroy all that I have made. The earth shall return to the abyss, to the surging flood, as in its original state. But I will remain with Osiris. I will transform myself into something else, namely a serpent, without men knowing or the gods seeing. Now, here's what's interesting. You know what I'm saying? Atum is saying that rather than some like an eternal life that would be analogous to what we see in the scriptures, right? When you're talking about, you know, this existence, there's going to be millions and millions of years that you're going to be, you know, vibing, or, you know, being that bricklayer or whatever you're doing. But eventually, Atum is going to return everything to the abyss, right? Everything's going back to chaos. Everything's going to go back to Isfet, right? Now, my understanding, and I got to do a little bit more research. That's why I'm framing it as a question rather than a definitive argument. But my understanding is that there's disagreement, you know, I guess amongst different folks, so this sort of thing, as to whether that return to chaos will be final or whether it would be just kind of like a return to chaos and then a beginning of a new, you know, creation, if you will. You know, it's kind of like a renewal. Now, here's the thing: regardless whether this return to chaos is like, you know, final, and then you have like basically a victory of Isfet, you know, in some sense, or if it's like a renewal. In either case, what's not clear, at least, is that there's a continuance of the individuals like us. You know what I'm saying? There's no as that I'm aware of. You know what I'm saying? There's no necessarily like guarantee that when this renewal happens, if it happens, that you're going to be renewed with it. You know what I'm saying? There's going to be like a new you, or as opposed to like what we see in Revelation, for example, where it's going to be a new heaven, a new earth. You know what I'm saying? Obviously, we'll be here embodied in some sense or another. You know what I'm saying? But you don't necessarily have that guarantee. So whether it be you not passing that trial, or whether it be, everything returning back to chaos, or if there is a renewal, there's no necessary guarantee. Again, what I'm saying is some shaky ground here. I'm saying I see a lot of like eternal insecurity, if you will. There's no guarantee that you're going to be around forever. Now, that raises some interesting questions, right? If you strip away some sense of real eternity, right? Actual eternity, particularly with a God, I'm saying incorruptible God, right? We might call it an incommensurable good, a God for to be with him. There is nothing, no evil that you can counter in this life that can compare to the good of being with him forever. You know what I'm saying? It's complicated.
Cyclical eternity. It's complicated. Oh yeah.
Fair enough. You know what I'm saying? So it's very interesting to me. Like I would want to know, like where do they fit within that cycle? I mean, does like from a philosophical standpoint, if you're destroyed and then there's like there's a recreation, like is that actually you? You see what I'm saying? Because the law of identity would suggest that probably not. You know what I'm saying? Like that'd be interesting. I guess maybe if you're an annihilationist, you might want to take issue with that. But not to get too deep into the weeds. To me, I would really want to hear somebody from Jabari's camp answer that. I would want to know, like, what is their rendering of that? Like, do they believe that this is going to be this finality, or do they believe it's going to be the cycle of renewal? And if so, do we survive that renewal, if you will? Right. And if we don't, then if you take out eternity, with a God, who's an incommensurable good, then I think that what you do is you then render everything before that end kind of insignificant, because it's all going to end up in chaos anyway. You know what I'm saying? Or be replaced by something else, later down the road. I'm saying that is in no way related to whatever's happening now. So the events and occurrences and the people that we see going on in this life, if you will, or this part of the cycle, if there's no bearing on the next end of the cycle, then you have to wonder, like, is there any, to me, it kind of undermines a sense of meaning. That's what I'm trying to get to.
Well, according to Dr. Folk, it's kind of like the spiritual version of Groundhog Day, their eschatology.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's the same cycle over and over. But what's interesting, right?
Well, if so, then that makes it even worse, though, right? Because if it's like, if everything is the same, if it's like kind of you're fated for everything to happen as they do, and it's going to be kind of just over and over again, then again, it seems that it would kind of undermine any sense of meaning or real choice or anything like that. You have this kind of weird cyclical determinism. You know what I'm saying? I think that would be interesting,
You say hearing Jabari's answer sure would be interesting.
Right.
Yes, it would. Yes, it would. I would love to see you and Jabari talk, Doctor. That'd be very interesting. But it's funny, right? They try to attach this correlation with their funeral practice with like the 10 Commandments, right? But where they really should be comparing is eschatologies. Because these negative confessions is part of their eschatology, right? So in one hand, we see in ancient Kemet the recently ancestor individuals, mind you, the elite ancestors, right? Mm-hmm. Have to fight for their souls on this boat with these other gods, fighting Apep, and with a bunch of spells, right? Whereas for the believer, part of our eschatology is enthronement ceremony. Because when you see Jesus talking to the churches in the book of Revelation, what does he say to each church? For those who stay faithful, you become a pillar in my temple. For those who stay faithful, you get a new name that only me and you will know. For those who stay faithful, you get a crown. For those who stay faithful, you get to sit with me. For those who stay faithful, I'm going to introduce you to my holy entourage, my council. I'm getting fitted for a crown. You're going to be whoever you was before you got here. I'm going to level up. You're remaining exactly the same.
The ultimate level up.
And it's the same again and again and again and again and again, right? You caught up in this Kemetic drum loop, right? The Christian, Dr. Folk, no more brick making? No, sir. Not for us, buddy. Not for us. But for us, part of our eschatology isn't fighting anymore. The fight's here. The fight's here, right? And who's fighting for us? Jesus. And then afterwards, we get enthroned.
Right.
You cannot compare the two.
No, you can't. And this is why it's so important that people understand. Again, I don't mean to be a broken record, but it's very key that ultimately what we're talking about here are aspects of worldviews that deal with things like destiny, personal value, and how do you grapple with what I think the average human recognizes to be, I will just call it human imperfection. We all know that we do dirt, right? You know what I'm saying? It doesn't take, regardless of what society that you're in, any society is going to have, some understand that, we're not perfect. And now the question is, what do you do with that imperfection? Now, on the Kemetic worldview, you got to do a lot. I'm saying you got to know the spells, names. You know what I'm saying? You got to have your heart weighed and so on and so forth. I mean, there's a lot going on there. You got to win this like real legit battle. You know what I mean? And then, who knows, what happens after that? I mean, who knows what happens, when everything returns to chaos? I don't know. But, nevertheless, when you're talking about from a biblical perspective, I'm saying, like, we're talking, there's a real grappling with that same human condition of imperfection, but we're talking about rather than what we might say in Christianese call like a works-based salvation is what you see like in Kemet. We're talking about real grace. We're talking about a God who is morally perfect, a God who is loved, who appointed you from eternity past to represent him in a way that is far more valuable than a bricklayer. I'm saying, like, you are called to be the image of God. Like, you're supposed to be his representatives, stewarding the earth that represents his in a way that aligns with his nature and his will for creation. So these are the kind of things that we see in the biblical worldview. I'm saying there's that inherent value, whereas, Kemet, not so much. I'm saying whether you're in this life or next, you still got a hierarchy. You got a lot of things going on there. So I think that you end up with ultimately, you end up with like Kemet selling you a bill of goods. And actually, this is something I wanted to get to in the dialogue I had with him on Sunday. I didn't really get a chance to etch it out, but given his theology, he believes that everything is part of the one. I'm saying I went into this in my dialogue with Sinetta, but he also believes that, as he said, that chaos or isfet, that's would have to be a expression of or part of the one, right? Now, if that's the case, then the one is stained with sin in our vernacular or chaos in their vernacular, but imperfection one way or the other. I'm saying, so there's ultimately they say things like, oh, we're all divine, we're one with the divine and so on and so forth. And it sounds great at first until you realize like, on your concept, we're all one with the divine, but that divine is stained with evil, right? And seems like it always will be so, or at least it is right now. So the Most High being that I'm a part of, sounds nice at first. Oh, you a God, you part of the divine. It sounds good at first, but then when you start teasing things out, it's not all that it seems. What you realize is you're stained with evil. Whereas on the biblical worldview, evil doesn't win. I'm saying God is not stained with evil. God is there's no shadow of turning in him, and ultimately the imperfection, the moral imperfection that we all know is a part of the human experience, that's going to be done away with. That's part of our eschatology. I'm saying in the end, we get to triumph over evil too, right? Through the cross, right? I'm saying, so again, we're not selling you a bill of goods. We're saying that no, evil exists. We partake in it, and we're gonna we're gonna make it over. I'm saying we're gonna overcome it. Rather, for them on the front end, it sounds great. Oh, you're part of the divine, but on the back end, it's like, well, yeah, but you're also staying with this evil that you can't shake. There's nothing you can do about it. Right. Then these are the kind of things that we really have to tease out when we're having
unless you have these spells.
Well, I mean, but even if you do, though, you know what I'm saying, like, you might be absolved of like some immediate infraction, but evil is woven, Isfet is woven into, reality itself. So you don't really escape it. You just kind of maybe create a little bit of distance, but it's a part of who you are. So I don't know. Do we want to do questions or?
Well, here's a statement here.
Okay.
You master apologists need to apologize to Africa. What do you say to that, Adam?
You know what's funny about it is, so, and this is something that I really appreciated with Dr. Bantu that he brought out, is that because I'm a Christian and I have this robust doctrine of what it means to be made in the image of God, that mankind is literally imprinted, I'm saying, in such a way that we ought to exemplify what God is like. What happens is, given sin, we see that image, in a sense, tainted or hindered in some way, inhibited in various different cultures, but yet I can still find it in any culture or any people group. And in so much as I can do that, I can celebrate those things that different people groups do, African or otherwise, I'm saying, that align with God's moral nature. So I'm at liberty to, partake in certain aspects of, quote unquote, African culture and, whatever it may be, in so much as it doesn't, infringe upon, God's moral law. So I'm not inhibited that way. But when it comes to the conscious community, what you constantly find is that they're just locked into this mode of having to disrespect and disregard their African ancestors who by their own will chose to be Christians. You know what I'm saying? In other words, you have to trample that aspect of your heritage underfoot in order for you to even take that kind of a stance. You see what I'm saying? So it makes no sense to me. To me, it's actually the shoe is on the other foot. I'm saying, listen, there's a lot of aspects of African culture and ideology and thought. Listen, I got books right now on African philosophy that I study. And in so much when I find something that's, in line with the truth, I can embrace that. But you guys are just locked into this notion of, the slave master's vision, blah, 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 blah. And you literally trample upon our forefathers and foremothers for no other reason than, quite frankly, than just to perpetuate your rebellion against God. I think that's a real shame.
Right. He needs to apologize to King Azana,
absolutely,
Athanasius, Shenova Threep,
Cyprian,
Moses the Black, right?
Yep.
And not only that,
Anthony.
The slaves who were in America actually knew the difference between actual Christianity and the slave owners' version of Christianity. And the reason why we know that is because of the slave narratives. The slaves themselves tell us they knew the difference.
And you know what, man? And you were so sad, bro, is that, that's an excellent point. When you actually look at several slave narratives, right? Or narratives from enslaved persons, you see perfect example. I've read a couple of these where there will be some slave master who's like on his deathbed, right? And he'll call the enslaved person to the big house, basically his house, to be around his bedside, and he's like, saying he's sorry. Oh my gosh, I'm about to die. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done these things to you. And the enslaved person, you see them in their own words talking about, like, kind of just like nodding along, but like, yeah, you're going to hell, bro. like literally saying these things. Like, in their vernacular, they're saying like, oh yeah, we hear you. You going to hell. You know what I'm saying? Like, they understood that the God of all creation, the God of the Bible, you know what I'm saying, was not pro-slavery and backing that slave master up. They understood that the difference between this, heinous caricature of Christianity that so many slave masters were pushing versus the real thing. I believe that was by the work of the Holy Spirit. But nevertheless, what's so sad is all these years later, all of a sudden, these folks today, they want to watch a YouTube video and they can't even process that level of nuance. You know what I'm saying? They're so far removed from those actual events, and they can't, even have the same level of I think, wisdom, you know what I'm saying, and discernment, if you will, that these people who actually experienced it went through. So to me, it's laughable that today you have people who will try to prop themselves up on this sort of slave master religion type of thing, when the enslaved persons themselves had the wherewithal, in so many instances anyway, to make that distinction, and yet somehow people can't today. I think that's pretty despicable, quite frankly, or sad at least.
Right. So, it's crazy, man. It's crazy. So, but
I don't know if I'm breaking up or if it's you. I'm not sure.
I think that might be me, actually.
Okay.
Special shout out to Dr. Folk for making sure that the facts were straight. You know what I mean? Definitely appreciate that. But before we out of here, Adam, what can we be expecting from you in the immediate future?
Yeah, man. So actually, I'll be taking the last couple episodes that I've had on the True ID podcast, or interviews rather, and I'll be putting out the podcast version, they're YouTube versions now, but I'll be putting those in the podcast format so we can officially relaunch the podcast. So I'm excited about that. I got a lot of stuff coming up, man. Working on some things behind the scenes, and basically just stay tuned, y'all. You'll be able to see that. But man, I got to go back, man, to do a review of the Reggie joint. When I was on Side dealing with brother Reggie. I still got some more to say about the Jabari thing. And y'all, actually, this weekend, matter of fact, this Saturday at 4:00, I will be on Garfield Reed's channel, having a dialogue with Shaka Atmos. You know what I'm saying? So we're preparing.
This Saturday?
This Saturday, yeah, 4:00.
At what time?
We're supposed to be 4:00 Eastern. So I'm going to be dialoguing with him, and the idea is, quite frankly, behind the scenes, we were talking about setting up a debate, which is what we intend to do. But one of the things that I share with them is that those guys rarely, if ever, actually well, first of all, clarify what their worldview is, and then secondly, they certainly don't. That's pretty cool. That's what's up. Glad they enjoyed it. But if they do clarify where they're coming from, they certainly don't take time to defend it. And so, I'm not going to go into a debate where I'm the only one with skin in the game having to defend something. So we're supposed to have a dialogue about what that's going to look like, and hopefully we'll be able to come up with a debate topic through that. So that'll be this Saturday, man, and we'll see what happens. I'm sure it'll be entertaining. You know how that goes down. So
quite. As for me, let me share my screen real quick. This Thursday, I will be debunking meme scholarship, the Jamar A. Milton edition, featuring up-and-coming urban apologist Ninja for Jesus. And what's interesting about Mr. Milton is that he actually is a member of Jabari'S Shrine of Ma'at.
Okay.
Yeah, so he makes a lot of memes attacking Christianity, and we're gonna address his memes, because for a lot of people, they think a meme is citing a source, right? It's scholarship, and we're gonna address, because he has lots of memes, lots of memes.
Get him.
So that's gonna be fun.
Hey, I also want to, I'd be remiss if I didn't give Pastor Jerome Gay a shout out. Shout out to him, man. He just released today. The Whitewashing of Christianity, man, by Pastor Jerome Gay, man. I've been digging into it. It's fire, man. I definitely endorse it for sure. And I definitely, would encourage y'all to go get that, man. Shout out to Pastor Jerome Gay, man.
Oh, absolutely. Amazing book. It's definitely a must read. Definitely a must read. So, ladies and gentlemen, with that being said, any last words, Adam, before we out of here?
Nah, man. I guess I'll see y'all in a couple of days on Garfield's channel, man.
Oh, that's going to be fun.
Absolutely. Get your popcorn ready.
Oh, must see TV.
Absolutely.
With that being said, it's True ID and BK signing off. Catch you later, y'all. Peace.